My family cut me off after years of using me as their personal ATM, so I took back every dollar and left them facing a truth they couldn't escape. I'm a 32-year-old male, making about $165,000 annually, plus quarterly bonuses that can push me well over $200,000 in good years. I've been grinding in this industry since college, working my way up from an entry-level estimator making $35,000 to running multi-million-dollar commercial projects. The journey wasn't easy. Lots of 70-hour weeks, dealing with impossible deadlines, managing crews of 50-plus people, and constantly putting out fires that could cost the company hundreds of thousands if not handled correctly. My family situation is, let's call it, complicated. Dad's been between opportunities for the better part of a decade, which is polite code for a professional couch occupant who's convinced the perfect job is just around the corner. He's 58 now and hasn't held steady employment since the 2008 recession hit his sales career. Mom works part-time at a local jewelry store, maybe bringing in $18,000 yearly when she feels like showing up consistently. The store is one of those boutique places that sells overpriced accessories to suburban moms who think spending $200 on a bracelet makes them sophisticated. Then there's my sister, Jessica, who's 29 and absolutely convinced she's destined for Instagram fame with her 2,800 followers watching her post pictures of coffee cups and knockoff designer bags she pretends are authentic. Jessica has never maintained employment longer than 8 months. Her record includes quitting a receptionist job because answering phones was beneath her, getting fired from a retail position for showing up late consistently, and walking out of a restaurant hostess job because a customer was rude to her. She constantly cycles through boyfriends based primarily on their bank accounts and vehicle quality, and possesses the financial awareness of a toddler let loose in a candy store with unlimited credit. But she's the baby of the family, the princess who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. So naturally, she's beyond any criticism or accountability. About 6 years ago, when my career really took off and I started earning serious money, I made what I now recognize as the catastrophic mistake of helping with family expenses. It started innocently enough. Dad needed transmission work on his aging truck, a legitimate $2,800 emergency that I covered without hesitation. Mom's credit cards were maxed out from various shopping sprees, a $7,200 debt that was crushing her with minimum payments, so I cleared it completely. Jessica's rent was overdue again after she'd blown her waitressing money on new clothes, another $1,650 that I handled to keep her from getting evicted. Initially, it felt absolutely incredible being the successful one, the provider, the hero swooping in to save everyone from their financial disasters. My parents seemed genuinely proud of what I'd accomplished. Jessica actually returned my phone calls and treated me with something resembling respect. For a brief shining moment, we felt like a real, functional family. But here's the fundamental truth about enabling people that I wish someone had taught me earlier. They stop seeing your generosity as kindness and start viewing it as an obligation. Your emergency assistance becomes their permanent safety net. Before you know it, you're not helping family members, you're funding their lifestyle choices. What began as occasional emergency assistance gradually evolved into monthly expectations. Dad's vehicle would mysteriously require expensive repairs every quarter like clockwork. Mom discovered unexpected costs that perfectly coincided with her desire to redecorate the living room or buy new furniture. Jessica transformed financial manipulation into what I can only describe as performance art, complete with crocodile tears and Academy Award-worthy sob stories. Her routine was masterful in its predictability. She'd call me at work, sobbing hysterically about how her rent was due in 2 days, and she didn't have the money, how she was about to be homeless. How this was absolutely, positively, definitely the final time she'd ever request help from anyone. She'd paint elaborate pictures of sleeping in her car, losing all her possessions, being forced to move back in with our parents in shame. The emotional manipulation was surgical in its precision. Then, without fail, 2 weeks later, Instagram stories would feature her at expensive spa retreats, fancy restaurants, or weekend getaways with whatever guy she was dating that month. The same person who'd been about to be homeless would be posting selfies with $15 cocktails and designer sunglasses, acting like she'd never had a financial worry in her life. The real problem, though, was Uncle Rick, Dad's older brother and the family's self-appointed financial expert. This man considered himself our family's personal Warren Buffett because he'd worked at a tax preparation service briefly in the 1990s, apparently qualifying him in his own mind as a sophisticated investment advisor. He'd managed my grandfather's estate as primary trustee since Grandpa passed 5 years ago, a responsibility that came with oversight of roughly $385,000 in various investments, real estate holdings, and assets that represented my grandfather's entire life's work. Uncle Rick's management philosophy seemed to involve treating Grandpa's legacy as his personal entertainment fund, weekend gambling trips to Atlantic City, a fishing boat he couldn't remotely afford on his retirement, income, multiple failed business ventures that somehow always required temporary funding from the estate, all financed by my grandfather's hard-earned money that was supposed to be preserved for the family's future. The absolute worst aspect of this entire dynamic? They all acted like I owed them this financial support, not grateful, not apologetic, not even acknowledging the sacrifice involved. Entitled. Completely, utterly entitled. Like I was some sophisticated ATM that dispensed cash when they input the correct emotional codes, and my primary function in life was solving their money problems while they made poor decisions. I remember the exact moment I realized how deeply I'd fallen into this psychological trap. Last year's Thanksgiving dinner, which I'd spent nearly $3,500 to host at an upscale restaurant because Mom wanted to create lasting memories for the family. I'm sitting there watching Jessica photograph every course for her Instagram, including the $180 bottle of wine I'd purchased, listening to Dad complain about his truck's latest mechanical issues, a vehicle I'd helped finance, while Mom planned another expensive vacation to Mexico that would somehow inevitably become my financial responsibility. Jessica looked directly at me with this casual, dismissive expression and said, "David, you're incredibly fortunate not having real problems to worry about. Must be absolutely amazing having all that construction money and not having to stress about anything. Fortunate." Like my success had materialized from thin air, like I hadn't spent 15 years working 65-hour weeks, managing impossible deadlines, dealing with stress-induced insomnia and anxiety, constantly educating myself on new technologies and management techniques, just to have my own sister act like my career achievements were some kind of cosmic lottery win, rather than the result of sustained effort and sacrifice. That moment crystallized my need for an exit strategy. I just didn't realize I'd need to implement it so quickly. Enter my best friend, Danny, the only person in my life who'd seen through their manipulation from day one. Danny and I met during college engineering courses, initially bonding over late-night study sessions and shared determination to succeed despite coming from families that couldn't provide financial support. While I ultimately entered construction management, Danny took the entrepreneurial route and launched a small but increasingly profitable consulting firm specializing in business systems optimization and process improvement for mid-sized companies. Danny possesses an almost supernatural ability to detect deception and manipulation, probably developed during his own challenging childhood. He'd observed my family dynamics for years, never hesitating to voice his concerns about how they treated me, though he was always careful to frame his observations as genuine worry rather than criticism. "Brother, your family treats you like a walking credit line," he'd tell me whenever I mentioned covering another one of their expenses. "When's the last time any of them asked about your well-being, your stress levels, your career goals, without immediately following up with a request for money?" I always dismissed his warnings because family loyalty seemed paramount, and I genuinely believed that supporting them was the right thing to do. But Danny maintained detailed observations about the pattern. This guy actually started tracking every instance I mentioned giving them money. According to his calculations, which he presented to me with spreadsheet precision, I'd provided over $78,000 to my family in just 3 years. $78,000. Let that sink in. That's more than many people make in an entire year, just handed over to family members who never expressed genuine gratitude and constantly demonstrated that they viewed my generosity as their birthright. "They're systematically draining you," Danny insisted during our last serious conversation about the situation. "What's worse, they don't even respect you for it. You're not their son or brother anymore. You're their benefactor, their patron, their financial safety net. They've reduced your entire identity to your ability to solve their money problems." Danny had this talent for brutal honesty that was simultaneously helpful and incredibly painful to hear. He also possessed creative problem-solving skills and strategic thinking abilities that would prove absolutely invaluable in the coming months. Growing up genuinely poor, not Dad's temporarily unemployed poor, but single mother working double shifts at multiple jobs poor, Danny understood exploitation and manipulation when he saw it. His mother had raised 4 children on combined restaurant server and cleaning service wages after his father abandoned the family when Danny was 11. He'd financed his college education entirely through academic scholarships, student loans, and working overnight shifts at a 24-hour gas station, often studying between customers at 3 in the morning. So when he watched my family systematically exploit my success while contributing absolutely nothing themselves, it genuinely infuriated him. Not jealous anger or resentment, but righteous indignation on behalf of someone he cared about. Your fundamental problem, Danny explained during one of our regular weekend gaming sessions, is strategic mismatch. You're playing chess while they're playing checkers. They make emotional moves designed to manipulate. You respond with logical problem solving. They guilt trip you with sob stories. You write checks to make the problem disappear. You need to start playing their game instead of letting them play you. Meaning what exactly? Meaning you need to start thinking strategically about this situation. You're a project manager, David. You solve complex logistical problems professionally, coordinate multiple moving parts, anticipate potential issues before they become crises. Start treating your family situation like a troubleshooting exercise that needs systematic resolution. I laughed initially, thinking he was just being dramatic, but that conversation planted seeds for everything that would follow. The idea that I could approach family dysfunction with the same analytical thinking I used professionally was both appealing and slightly terrifying. 2 weeks later, everything changed forever with a single text message that would alter the course of my life. March 22nd, 4:12 in the afternoon. I remember the time precisely because I was reviewing architectural blueprints for a major commercial project when my phone buzzed with a group message that would permanently end my relationship with my family. The text came from Mom's phone. "We've discussed this as a family and think it's time for you to step back from family finances. We're capable of handling our own money from now on. Please don't contact us for a while. We need space to figure things out without outside interference." I stared at that message for what felt like an eternity, reading it over and over, trying to process what had just happened. My initial thought was that it had to be some kind of error or miscommunication. Maybe Mom had meant to send it to someone else. But then Jessica responded within minutes with a series of celebration emojis, and Dad liked the message with obvious enthusiasm. My own family had just terminated me, fired me from being their son and brother. I knew exactly what had triggered this coordinated response. 3 weeks prior, I'd requested basic accounting from Uncle Rick regarding estate fund management, after noticing several suspicious transactions on the quarterly statement. Nothing accusatory or confrontational, simply a straightforward request. "Could you walk me through these withdrawals and explain what they were for?" Apparently, requesting transparency about how my deceased grandfather's money was being handled constituted boundary violations and controlling behavior that threatened their autonomy. The more I reflected on the situation, the angrier I became. These people had treated me like their personal banking institution for years, expecting me to fund their lifestyle choices while contributing nothing meaningful to my life. The precise moment I asked one simple question about financial accountability, suddenly I was the problem that needed to be eliminated. I immediately called Danny, my hands actually shaking as I dialed his number. "This is unbelievable," he said after I read him the text word for word. "They actually did it. They cut you loose like you were some kind of employee they could just dismiss. I can't believe this is happening. After everything I've done for them, all the money, all the help." "Stop right there," Danny interrupted firmly. "This is actually the best possible outcome for you. They just provided perfect justification for complete separation. They've shown you exactly who they are and how they really feel about you. But what about family loyalty? What about what? Your sister posting Instagram stories from expensive vacations while you pay her basic living expenses? Your parents who haven't expressed genuine gratitude or interest in your well-being in years? Your uncle who's been systematically embezzling from your grandfather's estate while calling you controlling for asking questions?" That last statement hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean embezzling, Danny? You told me he purchased a fishing boat with estate money. That's not poor financial management or questionable judgment. That's theft, plain and simple theft from a dead man's legacy. You know what we need to do? We absolutely do. You think I'm going to let you handle this situation alone after watching these people exploit you for years? I've been waiting for the perfect opportunity to help you address these parasites. Now they've handed us that opportunity on a silver platter." Danny's enthusiasm was genuinely contagious, but I still felt uncertain about escalating the situation. Maybe I should just walk away quietly and... "David, listen to me very carefully. These people systematically exploited your success and generosity for years, then discarded you the exact moment you requested basic accountability. They don't deserve your kindness, your consideration, or your protection anymore. They deserve consequences for their actions." He was absolutely right, and I knew it. I'd spent 3 years functioning as their personal ATM. When I finally asked for basic transparency about where money was going, suddenly I was the villain who needed to be eliminated from their lives. "All right," I agreed, feeling something shift inside me. "What exactly do you have in mind?" "First, we need a comprehensive damage assessment. What kind of financial access do you still maintain to their accounts and services?" That's when I started smiling for the first time since receiving their text message, Because in their haste to cut me out emotionally, they'd made one absolutely critical error. They'd expelled me from the family but completely forgotten to remove me from their financial accounts and services. Danny arrived at my apartment that evening armed with his laptop, multiple energy drinks, and the kind of focused determination usually reserved for military operations. He dubbed our investigation Operation Family Audit, and we began systematically listing every account, service, and financial arrangement I had access to or control over. The list turned out to be far more extensive than even I had realized. I was an authorized user on my parents' primary checking account, added years ago during one of Dad's periodic credit difficulties when his own banking access was limited. I possessed their complete online banking credentials because I'd helped them establish the accounts and set up automatic payments for various services. I was the primary account holder for the family cell phone plan, auto insurance policy, and 6 different utility accounts, including electricity, gas, water, and internet service. Most importantly, I had administrative access to the family's shared cloud storage system that contained Uncle Rick's estate documents, financial records, and sensitive information. And I was officially listed as backup trustee on Grandpa's estate, a legal position that everyone had apparently forgotten about except me. "This is absolutely beautiful," Danny said, examining bank statements and transaction histories on his laptop screen. "Look at this complete mess they've created. The numbers exceeded even my worst expectations and fears. In just the past 6 months alone, Uncle Rick had withdrawn over $31,000 from estate accounts for various personal expenses. Dad had overdrafted the family checking account 11 separate times, generating hundreds of dollars in fees. Mom had accumulated more than $13,500 in home shopping network debt across multiple credit cards. Most shockingly, Jessica had been using a credit card that was somehow connected to my primary credit line, systematically charging designer stores, expensive restaurants, spa treatments, and luxury items without my knowledge or consent. "David, she's been literally stealing from you for months," Danny said, scrolling through endless transaction records. "Look at this pattern. $750 at Louis Vuitton, $1,100 at some boutique downtown, $420 for a single brunch, $280 for massage therapy. She's been living like absolute royalty entirely on your credit while pretending to struggle financially." But the real treasure trove was Uncle Rick's systematic estate mismanagement. Danny methodically compared the original trust documents and legal requirements to the actual transaction history, building an ironclad case of financial misconduct. "David, this isn't just poor financial management or questionable judgment calls. This is straight-up fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. Look at this evidence. He used estate money to make the down payment on that fishing boat. He's been paying his personal mortgage with trust funds, and this $9,200 withdrawal from last month. The exact same weekend, he posted Facebook pictures of himself gambling in Atlantic City. How can you be certain about the Atlantic City connection?" Danny pulled up Uncle Rick's social media profile with the satisfied expression of a detective solving a murder case. "Because our genius posted multiple pictures of himself at the Borgata Casino with timestamps and location tags. The withdrawal from Grandpa's estate account and his casino posts match perfectly. Same weekend, same amounts, absolutely undeniable evidence. We spent the next 4 hours meticulously documenting everything we found. Danny created a secure folder on his private server and systematically uploaded copies of every bank statement, every suspicious transaction record, every piece of evidence we could locate. By the time we finished, we had built what amounted to a comprehensive criminal case file." "All right," Danny said, leaning back in his chair with obvious satisfaction. "We have more than enough evidence here to completely destroy all of them financially and legally. The question now is, how do you want to proceed with this information?" I considered the question carefully, feeling a cold clarity settle over me. "I want them to experience exactly what they made me feel for years: used, betrayed, taken advantage of, and completely powerless to stop it." Now you're thinking with perfect clarity. But we need to be strategic about our approach. We can't just demolish everything immediately. We need to apply gradual pressure so they understand exactly what they've lost and why they're losing it. Danny outlined what he called the cascade strategy, a systematic approach to dismantling their entire support system. Phase 1, we gradually remove their access to your money and credit so they feel increasing financial pressure without immediately understanding the source. Phase 2, we systematically shut down all the services and accounts you fund, forcing them to handle their own basic needs. Phase 3, we expose Uncle Rick's fraud to the appropriate legal authorities and let the criminal justice system handle the consequences. What about Jessica specifically? Danny's grin became absolutely diabolical. "Oh, I have very special plans for your dear sister. She's been building her entire fake lifestyle on your money while treating you like garbage." time for her to learn what reality looks like. We decided to start small and build momentum gradually. The first move was calling my cellular carrier and removing my entire family from my service plan. No warning, no explanation, no opportunity to make alternative arrangements. Their phones simply stopped working mid-conversation. Within 3 hours, I had accumulated 20 missed calls and over 40 text messages from various family members desperately trying to understand why their phones had suddenly stopped functioning. The messages ranged from confused, "Did you forget to pay the phone bill?" to demanding, "Fix this immediately," to genuinely desperate, "I need my phone for work applications, David." I ignored every single message and call. The next step was removing myself as an authorized user from various utility accounts: electricity, gas, internet service, water. Everything that had been automatically paid from my credit card for their convenience. I methodically canceled those payment arrangements and formally notified the utility companies that I was no longer financially responsible for those accounts. The absolute beauty of this approach, Danny explained with obvious appreciation for the strategy, is that they can't directly blame you for these problems. These appear to be normal billing issues and service interruptions, not intentional sabotage. They have to solve each problem individually without understanding the larger pattern. The third move was auto insurance. My entire family had been using my comprehensive policy because group rates were significantly cheaper for everyone involved. I called my insurance agent and removed them from coverage, effective immediately. That's when things started becoming truly interesting. Dad was driving to the hardware store the next afternoon when police pulled him over for what should have been a routine traffic stop: expired vehicle registration. What should have been a simple warning became a complete nightmare when the officer ran his information and discovered that his vehicle was completely uninsured. The result: a $450 fine, immediate vehicle impoundment, and license suspension pending proof of valid insurance coverage. Dad called me, absolutely screaming about insurance company mistakes and demanding that I fix the situation immediately. I let every call go directly to voicemail. Meanwhile, Jessica was discovering that her favorite hobby, maxing out credit cards on luxury purchases, had suddenly become impossible. I called the credit card company, removed her as an authorized user on my account, and then systematically disputed every charge she'd made in the previous 6 months as unauthorized usage. Her $750 Louis Vuitton purse, charged back to the merchant. The $1,100 shopping spree at designer boutiques, completely reversed. 6 months' worth of expensive dinners, spa treatments, and luxury purchases, all of it clawed back from the merchants who had accepted her fraudulent charges. But the real masterpiece was Danny's systematic destruction of her Instagram presence and fake lifestyle. Jessica's entire identity and self-worth were built around appearing wealthy and successful online: designer clothes, expensive restaurants, luxury lifestyle content, all carefully curated to create the illusion that she was living some kind of aspirational life. But every single element of that facade was funded entirely by my money. Now that the funding source was eliminated, she couldn't maintain the pretense. Danny, being the strategic genius he is, had been systematically screenshotting her posts for months, building a comprehensive archive of her fake lifestyle. When she started posting defensive content about jealous haters trying to ruin her life, he created several anonymous social media accounts and began commenting on her posts with photographic receipts and documentation. "Girl, isn't that the exact same Louis Vuitton bag you returned to the store last week?" Accompanied by a screenshot of her at the customer service counter, absolutely loving the designer lifestyle. "By the way, how's your brother's credit score doing these days?" with a screenshot showing her unauthorized charges. "Those spa treatments look amazing. Must be nice having family money to fund the luxury lifestyle," with documentation of the disputed charges. It was absolutely beautiful to watch. Her Instagram comment section transformed into a battlefield as followers began questioning whether any aspect of her lifestyle was authentic. Her follower count dropped by 45% in just 2 weeks, as people realized they'd been following a complete fabrication. But we were only getting started with the serious consequences. While we were methodically strangling their day-to-day finances, Danny and I were simultaneously preparing for the nuclear option, exposing Uncle Rick's systematic fraud to the appropriate legal authorities. Remember that backup trustee position I mentioned having on Grandpa's estate? That role carries serious legal authority and responsibility, especially when the primary trustee is clearly misappropriating funds and violating their fiduciary duties to the beneficiaries. Danny helped me research the specific legal requirements for reporting trustee misconduct, and together we assembled a comprehensive file that would make prosecutors genuinely excited: bank records, receipts, social media posts, credit card statements, documented patterns of behavior. Everything needed to prove beyond any reasonable doubt that Uncle Rick had been systematically looting the estate for personal use over an extended period. Before dropping that legal nuclear bomb, however, we wanted to give my family one final opportunity to reveal their true character and priorities. I carefully crafted a formal email to the family group that was professionally worded and completely reasonable. Hello, everyone. I've been reviewing financial documents related to Grandpa's estate and have noticed several irregularities that require investigation. As backup trustee, I'm legally obligated to look into these matters. Uncle Rick, could you please provide detailed documentation for the following withdrawals from estate accounts? Followed by a comprehensive list of 18 suspicious transactions totaling over $52,000. The response was immediate, coordinated, and exactly what Danny and I had predicted. Uncle Rick, you have absolutely no authority to question my decisions or management of this estate. I've been handling these responsibilities perfectly well without your interference or micromanagement. Dad, David, you're completely out of line here. Rick knows exactly what he's doing and doesn't need to justify his decisions to you. Mom, this is precisely why we said we needed space from you. You're being controlling, disrespectful, and completely inappropriate. Jessica, OMG, can you just leave everyone alone for once? You're so obsessed with money and control, it's actually scary. Not a single family member addressed the actual question about missing money. Not one expressed any concern about potential fraud or mismanagement of Grandpa's legacy. They simply circled the wagons and attacked me for asking legitimate questions about documented financial irregularities. Absolutely perfect, Danny said when I showed him their responses. They just provided everything we need to prove this isn't about family drama or personal conflicts. It's about criminal financial behavior that they're all complicit in covering up. That same afternoon, I filed formal complaints with the State Attorney General's office alleging trustee misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, and possible embezzlement. I also sent complete copies of our documentation to the local district attorney's office and the IRS Fraud Investigation Division. How long before they realize what's happening? I asked Danny. Based on my experience with these matters, Uncle Rick is going to receive a very unpleasant phone call from a government attorney within 48 hours. They take estate fraud extremely seriously, especially when there's this level of documentation and evidence. Danny's prediction proved absolutely accurate. Exactly 2 days later, Dad called me in a complete panic.
David, what did you do? The police want to interview Rick about estate management. They've frozen all the accounts.
Your mother is completely hysterical, and we don't know what's happening. I reported suspected fraud to the appropriate legal authorities, I replied calmly. You know, exactly like I'm legally required to do as backup trustee when I discover evidence of misconduct. But Rick said the withdrawals were all legitimate. Dad, Rick stole over $52,000 from Grandpa's estate to buy a boat and fund his gambling addiction. The police didn't freeze those accounts because I'm being vindictive. They froze them because Uncle Rick committed multiple felonies and violated his legal responsibilities as trustee. Complete silence on the other end of the phone. We really need to talk about this situation, Dad finally said. No, we really don't. You made it very clear that you wanted me to step back from family finances. Mission accomplished. I hung up and turned off my phone, feeling a profound sense of satisfaction. The next morning, Danny woke me up with the news that Uncle Rick had been arrested at his home and charged with multiple counts of estate fraud, embezzlement, and breach of fiduciary duty. The arrest made the front page of the local newspaper. Local man charged with estate fraud, with Uncle Rick's mugshot displayed prominently. The article mentioned that he had allegedly stolen over $55,000 from his deceased father's estate to fund personal expenses, including gambling debts, luxury purchases, and recreational activities. My phone immediately started ringing nonstop. Mom, Dad, Jessica, Aunt Linda, even extended family members I hadn't heard from in years. I let every single call go directly to voicemail and listened to them later for entertainment. The voicemails were absolutely enlightening in terms of revealing their true priorities. Mom, sobbing hysterically, David, please call me back immediately. The attorneys are saying Rick could face serious prison time. All the estate accounts are frozen, and we can't afford legal representation. We desperately need your help to fix this situation. Dad, sounding completely defeated. Son, I know we haven't handled this situation well, but we're still family. Rick made some mistakes, but he doesn't deserve to go to prison. Can't you just drop the charges and work this out privately? Jessica, panicked and desperate. David, this is completely insane. Uncle Rick isn't a criminal. He just made some bad financial choices. Plus, all my stuff got repossessed and my credit is completely ruined, and I can't even afford groceries. You have to fix this mess. The most revealing one came from Aunt Linda, Uncle Rick's wife, David. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing here, but you're systematically destroying this entire family. Rick is fundamentally a good man who made some mistakes. If you had any decency or family loyalty, you'd be helping us instead of attacking us when we're most vulnerable. Danny and I listened to all the voicemails while playing video games and eating takeout, marveling at their complete inability to accept responsibility for their actions. "They still don't understand what's happening," Danny observed with obvious amusement. "They're not apologizing for treating you terribly or acknowledging their exploitation. They're angry that actions finally have consequences. Should I respond to any of them? Absolutely not yet. Let them marinate in this situation for a while longer. They need to fully understand that their old life of using you is completely gone before they'll be capable of genuine change." Danny's advice proved absolutely correct. Over the following weeks, the full scope of their financial dependency on me became painfully evident to everyone involved. Without my credit and income supporting their lifestyle choices, everything began collapsing in spectacular fashion. Dad's truck got repossessed because he couldn't make the monthly payments without my financial assistance. Mom had to cancel their planned vacation to Mexico and pick up additional shifts at the jewelry store to cover basic expenses. Jessica was forced to move back in with my parents because she couldn't afford rent or basic living expenses. And her Instagram influencer dreams died completely when repo men reclaimed all her fake designer items. The house they were renting? Turns out I'd been co-signing that lease agreement for the past 2 years. When I formally removed myself from the lease, the landlord reviewed their actual income and decided it was insufficient to maintain the property. They received 30 days' notice to find alternative housing. But the most serious problem was the mounting legal expenses. Uncle Rick desperately needed a competent criminal defense attorney for the fraud charges, and experienced white-collar criminal lawyers don't come cheap. The family was looking at a minimum of $35,000 in legal fees, and with their finances completely destroyed, they had absolutely no way to pay for adequate representation. That's when Dad finally swallowed whatever remained of his pride and came to see me in person for a final confrontation. I was working in my home office on a Saturday afternoon when the doorbell rang. Through my security camera system, I could see Dad standing on my front porch, looking like he'd aged 15 years in the past month. He was wearing a wrinkled shirt that probably hadn't been washed in days. His hair was completely disheveled, and his entire posture screamed defeat. A dramatic transformation from the man who used to lecture me about family responsibilities and knowing your place. I deliberately let him stand there for 10 full minutes before opening the door, watching through the camera as he shifted nervously and rehearsed whatever speech he'd prepared. "David," he said when I finally opened the door, his voice barely above a whisper. "Please, we really need to talk." "About what specifically?" "About Rick, about the family situation, about how incredibly wrong we were about everything." I allowed him into my living room, but deliberately didn't offer him a seat or any refreshments. He stood there awkwardly, looking around at my nice furniture, expensive electronics, and successful lifestyle. All the things I could afford because I wasn't supporting 4 other adults anymore. "We completely messed up," he said finally, his voice cracking with emotion. "All of us. We treated you terribly for years, took advantage of your success and generosity, and when you tried to hold us accountable for our actions, we threw you away like you didn't matter to us. Okay? And we're genuinely sorry, deeply, profoundly sorry. We know we don't deserve your forgiveness after everything we've done, but we're asking for it anyway because we're absolutely desperate." "How desperate are we talking?" Dad's shoulders completely sagged under the weight of his admission. "We're going to lose the house within 2 weeks. Rick is facing 5 to 10 years in federal prison unless we can afford decent legal representation. Your mother is working double shifts, and she's physically and emotionally exhausted. Jessica is talking about moving to Las Vegas to work as a cocktail waitress because she can't find any other way to make money with her destroyed credit." I almost laughed out loud at that last detail. Jessica, who had always thought she was too sophisticated and special for regular jobs, was about to learn exactly how the real world works for people who don't have family money to fall back on. "Those all sound like problems that aren't my problems to solve," I said matter-of-factly. "You're absolutely right. They're not your problems, but we're hoping you might be willing to help us solve them anyway, despite everything we've done." "And why exactly would I want to do that?" Dad looked me directly in the eye for the first time since he'd arrived. "Because you're a fundamentally better person than any of us. Because even after everything we did to you, you're still the only person in this family with the integrity and resources to save us from the consequences of our own actions." "And what specifically are you asking me to do?" "Help us pay for Rick's criminal defense attorney. Help us find a new place to live that we can actually afford. Maybe if you can find it in your heart, let us back into your life and try to rebuild some kind of relationship." I pretended to consider his request for a long moment, watching hope flicker in his eyes. "No, Dad," I said finally. "You don't get to spend 3 years treating me like a personal ATM. cut me out of the family when I ask basic questions about financial accountability, and then come crawling back begging for help when your lives fall apart. That's not how any of this works. But we apologized, and we're genuinely sorry. You apologized because you're desperate and need money, not because you're actually sorry for how you treated me. If Uncle Rick hadn't gotten arrested, if your finances hadn't completely collapsed, if you could still afford your lifestyle without my help, would you be here apologizing? Or would you still be treating me like the family disappointment who asks too many inconvenient questions? Dad couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. Here's exactly what's going to happen, I continued with absolute finality. Uncle Rick is going to plead guilty and serve significant prison time because he's a criminal who systematically stole money from his dead father's estate. You and Mom are going to downsize to housing you can actually afford on your combined income. Jessica is going to get a real job and learn how the world actually works for people who don't have family money to subsidize their lifestyle choices. And all of you are going to live with the long-term consequences of treating me like garbage for years. And what about you in all this? Dad asked quietly. Me? I'm going to continue living my life surrounded by people who actually value me as a person instead of viewing me as an ATM with legs. Starting with Danny, who's been more of a brother to me than my actual family ever was. As if perfectly choreographed, Danny walked through my front door at that exact moment, carrying takeout food for our planned gaming session. "Oh, hey there, Mr. Swanson," Danny said with obviously fake cheerfulness. "How's the whole family bankruptcy situation working out for everyone?" Dad's face turned bright red with embarrassment and anger, but he didn't say a single word in response. He just turned around and walked out of my house, probably for the very last time.